Hey everybody, welcome back to my kitchen. Chef James here. Second video in our little mini series we're doing with Tulsa Parks and Rec, bringing to you guys healthy, fresh, really nice recipes that you can do at home. Follow along, watch the video, do it later. Really tasty stuff that we're gonna make today. It's cold outside, it's raining. It's actually really quite chilly out there. So what better day to make something as wonderful as a fresh chili rellano soup with a nice little bit of baked cheese on top. Perfect for this type of weather. I'm going to give a little shout out to a friend of mine, Erica, who asked for a poblano soup. Erica, this will be a poblano soup, and then once we get that, we're going to introduce a little bit more, and we're going to take it kind of to the next level and make a chili rellano soup, which in my opinion is even better. Quickly, let's go over the ingredients we're going to need. Of course, we will need our poblanos. Beautiful, fresh, inexpensive, really great flavor peppers. Find them at your local Mexican grocery store. A little bit of fresh cilantro. I'm going to put a jalapeno in there because I like a little bit of heat. Jalapeno gives a little bit of that heat. Certainly you don't have to add that if you don't want to. I like it. Some garlic, onion. We're going to use yellow onion, maybe half of this. A full half pound, 8 ounces of cream cheese. We've got chicken stock. Either what you can do your own, you can make your own stock, your own broth if you want, if you like, or I'm just going to use these, that's fine. We've got some butter, we've got a little bit of cheese here. As I mentioned, we're going to do a nice little bake on top of that. That's where the cheese comes in. So step one is going to be to actually separate the skin from the flesh of the poblano, and to do that, we're going to need to introduce heat. Preheat your oven, grab yourself a sheet pan, and lay your poblanos. We've got about, what do we have, 7 here, I think? You can get away with 5, 6, 7 poblanos. The oven, heat on, poblano on the sheet pan, toss it in, maybe 20, 25 minutes, roast those poblanos a little bit, and when we come back, we're gonna pull them out. You're gonna see some really nice color on them, and we're gonna wanna cover them. We're gonna hold them for a little bit, let them sweat and release that skin from the flesh. Let's start right there. Okay. So the poblanos have been in the oven under the broiler for about 15-20 minutes. I've been kind of rolling them around, moving them around. Certain areas of our broiler are going to be a little hotter, maybe close to the back, maybe in the middle. So you're going to want to turn your poblanos over and move them around really every 3 minutes, 4 minutes at the most, so that you don't really kind of overly burn and overly blister certain parts of your pepper. And what you're going to notice within minutes is that wonderful smell of poblanos, and I always forget about this when I eat poblano, when I prepare poblano, just how excellent the smell is. How it's not a hot or a spicy. It's just a really beautiful poblano freshness that fills the air when these are cooking, and that's exactly what the kitchen smells like now. So we'll take a peek, pull these out, and these are actually in great shape, as you can see. So you can see we've got the color, the blistering. It's darkened, but not really burnt. And if you kind of flip them over, they become really soft and almost bag-like. And that flesh is really, it's cooked. So now these are ready to go. Like I say, they're almost bag-like, blistered. Skin's already sort of separating. But now they have to cool. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of let them cool and sweat a little bit more and just make that skin that much easier to separate. And to do so, we're just going to put it in a bowl. Throw a little bit of a cover on it. You can use tin foil or saran wrap, whichever one you prefer, cling wrap. I'm going to use tin foil. So we'll let this sit on the side and sweat a little bit more for maybe about 10 minutes. And then when we open that off, they'll be cooled down enough that we can handle it. You might want to use gloves, and we'll be able to just peel that skin right off, take the stem, take the membrane, and just be left with a beautiful piece of poblano flesh. And while that's happening, we've got our stock, chicken stock on the go, and we've thrown into that a little bit. We went with the Tones cilantro lime seasoning. We threw in about a teaspoon of that. We put in, I forgot to mention, cumin powder. About 2 tablespoons of cumin powder went in there as well. And so that's kind of, we're going to put that on the side, keep it simmering. We don't want to boil off too much of the water. So if you notice that it's kind of starting to boil, you might want to add a little more water in there. Otherwise, the flavors are going to be a little too concentrated. 6 cups is what went in there, the equivalent of about 6 cups. And that is going to be the stock that we're going to kind of use once we start cooking out the rest of our vegetables, and we're going to add that, and that is how we're going to make our soup. So let's let this sit for about 10-15 minutes, and while that's doing that, I'm going to prepare and chop onions, cilantro, jalapenos, and garlic. So here we have some of the finished poblanos. They've sweated down nicely. We can see the skin is really almost kind of bag-like around it, and it's actually peeling off in a lot of instances. Look at how easily it peels. Now, not all of them are going to peel off quite so effortlessly. You know, have a little bit of patience, and certainly remember, a little bit of skin, if you leave a little skin, this is not the end of the world. The skin has a lot of nice flavor in it. It's got a lot of nice charred flavor into it, and that's why we were careful not to really overly blister it and really burn it, because then it kind of more imparts an overly kind of burnt flavor rather than a really nice charred flavor. And that's kind of where we stopped, and that's what we've got right now. So you can see that the skin is coming off. It's been sitting there for about 10 minutes. It's still quite warm, so I've kept the gloves on, or put the gloves on, pardon me. But for the most part, that skin's coming off quite nicely. And then you can go ahead and we take our stem off as well. And then there's the seeds on the inside, and you can pull those out. Try not to lose any of that flesh. That's kind of the real money. That's really what we're looking for, is that beautiful, nice flesh. So you can see a lot of the skin is coming off on this, and we're just left with smells amazing, really fresh. The poblano flesh, roasted nicely, a lot of flavor in there. Yeah, just keep going through all of those. Okay, so poblanos are done. We've gone ahead and we've taken the stems, most of the seeds, a lot of the skin off, and now we're just left with a nice pile of aromatic, fleshy poblano peppers. Here we have 2 tablespoons of butter, already hot. We're going to turn the heat up a little bit on this. We're going to introduce our onion. Got about half of that big yellow onion as you guys saw earlier. We're going to get the jalapeno in there. It's going to go in here on medium-high heat, and we're going to do this for about 5 minutes, just enough to sweat the onion, get the garlic, to cook these out a little bit. Garlic is in, about 2 teaspoons of garlic in there. The cream cheese, we're going to put that in later. So let's let this go for a minute. Our stock is still over here, nice and warm and ready to be put into use. Sweat that down a little bit. One more ingredient I forgot to mention that we're going to add is a little bit of oregano. You know, something maybe not quite always associated with Mexican cooking is oregano, but it is a real big player in a lot of Mexican cuisine. Delicious. You always think Italian, but it actually lends really well to Mexican cuisine as well. So we're going to add a little pinch of that, of dried oregano. If you've got fresh, great. Use that more closer towards the end. But we want to wake that dried oregano up a little bit and get it in here. Maybe about half a teaspoon. You see him sweating down quite nicely. So we're going to sweat this down a little bit more. Remember, our poblanos are already basically cooked. And when we add that in, it's going to be kind of right towards the end. But we're going to give them a little bit of contact heat as well, and kind of marry all these flavors together before we introduce the stock. Now we'll go ahead and we'll throw in our poblanos. Now you don't really have to chop those up. We're going to break them apart in the pan a little bit. You can see there's still some skin on some of these. And again, that's not too big a deal. You're going to see it. It's really, really challenging to get all of the skin off, but I do encourage you to try. But it definitely is a little bit tricky. Oh, wonderful smell. That addition, that little bit of oregano we put in there, really, you can smell it right away with the onion, the garlic, and now you throw these poblanos in here, and it really kind of, the smell of this marries really well together. So I think we're in pretty good shape there. I think it's time to introduce our stock that's been kept hot over here. Remember I said 6 cups. Now when we're talking about 5 to 7 poblanos that I mentioned in the beginning, how big is the poblano, how much flesh do we lose, you kind of have to use your discretion, but I like to season that stock in advance so that when I add it to it, it's whatever amount I add, it's already flavored the way I want it to be flavored. And of course, at the end, we'll check for seasoning and we'll adjust kind of before we present the finished product here. So we'll bring that up to boil, crank that heat up, get up to a nice simmer. So we'll throw a lid on that. We're going to get it up to a simmer, and then we're going to take it back down and just let it kind of low simmer for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. That's it. With the lid on, it's already boiling, which is why we like to keep that stock hot on the side so that we're not standing here for 5, 10 minutes, maybe more, waiting for all of this from cold to get up to temp. It's already there. So we'll let that simmer 5 or 10 minutes, and when we come back, we'll move on to the next step, which is going to be to add this, and this is an option, but this is the way I like to do my Chile rellano soup. I like to add this to the blender, and I'm going to puree this and make it into a really kind of nice, thick, not chunky soup, and it really comes out quite nicely. Nice color as well, so we'll get to that. Okay, so now we've been simmering here for about 10 minutes. We've used all of our 6 cups of stock. You can see it's pretty runny, but once we put this in the blender, you're going to notice it's going to thicken up really quite nicely, but still stay runny. And so that's what we're going to do now. Heat off. Carefully transfer this extremely hot soup. Keep in mind that we're still going to season this at the end. We're not done with the flavor. So if you taste it right now and it's not quite where you want it to be, wait until we've gone ahead and pureed the garlic, blended the garlic, onion, and all those other flavors together. Take the rest of that, and again, carefully, very, very hot, guys. And you're going to want to transfer that. All the contents. We're going to be reusing this pot, so try not to leave any of the chunks in there. Perfect. I'm going to throw a towel over top of this, like so, just in case some splurts out again. Really recommend that you wait until it's cooled down, and that's when I would do this. I wouldn't do this when it's piping hot like it currently is, but I'm going to go in here and do it. Start really low, nice and slow. Felt a little bit of that hot come out. Again, be careful. Let it cool down first. Sometimes, especially if you've got it filled right up to the top like we do once it's blending, some of that can spurt out, and it's essentially boiling water. So, you know, let that cool down first. Throw it in the fridge, in the freezer, whatever you want to do to bring the temperature down, and then go ahead and blend it, and we'll finish it afterwards, and we'll get it back up to temp again anyways. All right, transfer that back. Get the temperature back on. This would be the time, if you were to introduce some sort of a protein like a chicken or something, this would be the time to do it. Once that gets back up to simmer, which it is, that's when we're going to introduce our cream cheese, our half a pound or 8 ounces of cream cheese. That's when you want to get it in there, break it up a little bit in there. Stir that in. It's going to thicken it up, add a really, really nice creamy kind of texture and flavor to this soup. It's whisked in, it's melted. Our soup is nice and creamy the way we want it. We'll have to taste it a little bit. Oh, that's really nice. The little bit of jalapeno I put in, a little bit of heat with that. The poblano, onion, the garlic, all really comes together really quite nicely. That cheese, that we'll let it kind of simmer here for a minute or two, finish cooking a little bit, and then we're going to grab our bowls, get it in there, and get it in the broiler and finish this off. So there it is. There's the finished product. You know, delicious Chile rellano soup, creamy, cheesy, that nice crusted cheese on top as well, fresh cilantro, a little bit of the oil on top is a nice garnish. Listen, Mother's Day is over. But it's not too late to prove to Mom that you're her favorite. Put this together for a surprise her with this, and if you weren't already, you are a lock to be the new favorite child just right after Mother's Day. So Tulsa Parks and Rec, real fun doing these last 2 videos with you guys. It's been a pleasure making these dishes. Everyone at home, I encourage you to try this dish. It's delicious. On a cold day like today, it's fantastic. Thanks for joining me.